In this video, I'm excited to present a conversation with Gavin Andrews, who's the Managing Director of HeartMath UK and Ireland. I've known Gavin for a number of years, since training with him as a HeartMath coach. And one of the great things about spending time with Gavin is that he really practices the HeartMath way. Now, in this hour-long video, we cover a wide range of topics, including the latest developments in the HeartMath trials with the NHS, the trouble with well-being wearables, vagus nerve stimulation, heart rate variability, burnout, coronavirus anxiety, emerging stress technologies, and the latest developments in HeartMath. It was a brilliant conversation, and I'm sure you'll find lots of interesting insights in the next hour. And I've put chapters into the description so that you can dip in and out as you find useful. Find in the description a 10% discount code that can be applied to everything on the HeartMath UK website. So be sure to head to the link or to listen out for the code later on in the video. If you'd like to read a transcription of our conversation, then head to hatson.coach/Gavin A. So now please sit back and enjoy an excellent hour of conversation with Gavin Andrews. Gavin, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. You're not looking too good. You've gone out of focus. There we are. Now you're back in focus again. I'm doing good. Thank you. I hope I'm in focus. I'm feeling in focus. So
you're very in focus. You're very in focus. So how's things for you in the current state of lockdown and COVID and all that?
The strange, unpredictable times we're living in. Yeah, things are good. I almost feel a little bit guilty in saying that I've been doing really quite well, actually. It does make me feel slightly awkward saying that, because I know a lot of people haven't been, actually. But I have, and part of that's because of my own personal kind of practice and stuff, and part of that as well is because I feel that we can help a lot of people in the type of work that we do and type of work that you do as well. There's there's a lot that we can do to help.
Yeah.
So I've been doing okay, and lots of ideas for things popping up, and lots of interesting stuff coming out of HeartMath in the US as well, which is encouraging. So I've been doing okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd rather not go into another period of lockdown and stuff, but hey, look, there's things we can control and things that we can't, so we'll deal with whatever comes our way.
Absolutely. Yeah, focus in the right areas. So tell me a bit about yourself and how you've got to where you are now.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, we won't go all the way because I'm nearly 48. It'll take us a little while, actually. But so my original sort of I've always been interested in kind of personal development, inclusive of all the kind of bigger questions in life, sort of what you might call spiritual, although non-religious for me, actually. But I've always had a bit of an interest in that, and I've always been a big science fiction reader and fantasy reader and all that stuff. So it's always been a bit part of me that's sort of wanted to know, well, what's it all about, and what can we do about it, and how can we make it better, and who am I, and what should I do with my life, and that type of stuff. So that has always been a part of me. And then I guess I lost that part of me for quite a while. I ended up spending a large chunk of my career in the media, and latterly I worked for The Guardian, which was a lovely company to work for. But just one of those periods where I lost 10 years doing something that I look back on and I was like, why did I do that? I'm not really sure. It had some benefits. They were a nice company, but so and then basically what happened in order to take me out of that world was sort of a crucible moment in life. I lost my first wife to breast cancer, and it's one of those things that sort of just woke me up. Yeah. And just one of those times in life when you get forced to sort of reappraise things. So that was really the route that led me to where I am now. I decided to move out of my career. I was finding it, for want of a better word, meaningless, actually, and I had a bit of an existential crisis going on, and I had a period of grieving to do, and I actually went back to university and I did an MBA, a business masters, and on the business masters, the thing I enjoyed the most was stuff about leadership. The MBA I did was heavy on the leadership side of things, so I got really into leadership, but I was less interested in how you might just be a business leader and kind of boss people around and tell them what to do. And I got more interested in self-leadership. So this, some of the theories around things like emotional intelligence and authentic leadership. And that really led me to the work that I'm doing now. And how do you really work out who you are? How do you work out what you want in life? And how do you go about making sure that you stay connected more often to who it is you really are? And so for me, that was the sort of emotional intelligence side of things. I recognized when I got stressed, I tended to lose my way, and I tended to do and say stupid things and not be the best version of myself. And when I was feeling good, things tended to flow. And then one day I went to a strange lecture about the physiology of leadership, and some chap called Andy Pellant, who's my business partner now, started talking about this thing called HeartMath, and he did a demonstration on a bit of technology. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. That emotional intelligence actually is a theory, but this is a practice. This is something that you can do. And I've just had the evidence that these techniques actually have an impact, as demonstrated by this technology. So I was just instantly hooked, to be frank, Matt. And I spent the next, must have been about 5 years, just like practicing HeartMath myself in terms of the techniques. And I bought one of the old gadgets, the M-Wave PSR. Yeah, the old M-Wave PSR, just like flashed red, blue, and green, and it was very basic. But I liked it, and I liked the fact that it didn't lie to me about how I was feeling, and I liked the fact that it gave me that feedback on the technique practice. So yeah, I'd been practicing the techniques with the biofeedback for a number of years, and I started to bring it into. Then I moved into university lecturing and leadership and management coaching and training and consulting, and I brought more of the HeartMath stuff in as the sort of foundation stuff in the leadership training, and it really resonated with lots of people. And I realized, actually, if you can just get yourself into this state, the state that we call coherence, then more often than not only will you be emotionally intelligent, but you're also going to be more creative and empathetic. You're going to come up with better ideas, more innovative. You're going to be better at listening to people. So yeah, it just all sort of flowed from there, really. And then it wasn't until 2012 that I formalized my relationship with HeartMath, and Andy and I had become business partners. And that's when actually we became HeartMath UK and Ireland. So it was actually quite a long journey. What was that advert in the 80s, the Remington advert? I liked the company so much I bought it. So I didn't buy HeartMath. They still own themselves. But yeah, I'm the lucky guy that represents them over here and looks after the selling of the products and the delivering of the training and the spreading of the message, really.
Yeah.
So there we go, potted history.
Yeah, really interesting. I was reflecting on your sort of experience with the HeartMath. I mean, I remember having buying an early M-Wave. I think when my kids were really young, and my youngest was quite ill, and I was running a business, and I was really crumbling under the pressure. And I remember hearing about HeartMath somewhere and buying what seemed like an exorbitantly expensive beer kit with some lights on it.
Yeah.
And focus is going to go, and just feeling better. And I think that there's something about that. There's that moment when something else starts telling you about how you're really feeling, which is pretty magical. And I'm sure we've seen it so many times with people. The first time they get that feedback, that hang on a sec, you're maybe telling yourself a lie in terms of how you are, is really profound, and something that started me. That really started me going off in this direction, in terms of initially helped me very much through my own dark times. Came out thinking, hang on a sec, this is something that everybody should. Why does not everybody know this? And why don't people use this?
Yeah.
Plus, it's extraordinarily geeky, so it ticked that box.
Yeah, if you like gadgets, then it's good as well.
Yeah. So how's HeartMath UK now? What's
Yeah, good. So we've been in business since 2012, and we initially focused on just a couple of things, which was selling the products, obviously, because that's an important part of what we do. So, we sell them on Amazon, we sell them on our own web store. So that was one of the things we focused on initially, was just building the market over here. And then the other big piece was was getting people to be out there delivering it. So that was training coaches. So we, HeartMath, because it's such a simple approach, and it lends itself to all sorts of applications, whether that be kids test anxiety or behavioral problems, through to things like sports coaching, through to management leadership coaching, or increasingly health professionals using it to either help themselves with their stress or help their patients with their conditions and empower them to take more control of their health. It's really important to us that we get more and more people out there, like people like you who've trained with us, to spread the word and to use it in the worlds in which you have passion and expertise. So we spent our first few years building that and got it up to a good place. We've been growing since then. There's been all the innovation on the way. So we no longer have the little M-Wave PSR handheld thing that you and I both bought. Things have moved on to smartphones. So there's the Bluetooth sensor now. That makes life a lot easier. Recent innovation really has been the whole We Had Heart thing, which is trying to take the message of heart-based living, connecting more with your heart, connecting more with the hearts of other people, and then enabling people to come together in small groups to practice heart coherence meditation. So that's been a big passion of mine, and just getting that out there and we've got over 100 groups now in like 22, 23 different countries. And so that's a nice vehicle, because it doesn't require you to be interested in tech or buy a piece of technology or anything like that. It's really just a way of helping people who are interested in connecting with the heart a bit more, got a sense of, I want to connect with myself, I want to connect meaningfully with others. And actually, in the current circumstances where we are having to separate physically, the fact that the whole thing's online as well has been great timing. So there's always a lot going on. There's other side projects and things. We'll probably chat about those in a bit. I'm very passionate about the power of art and music to help people manage their stress and stuff. So there's times are good, and I think actually what I'm seeing more and more of is that the medical world is taking more of an interest in this type of thing. Now, it's taken a long time, and at times it's been frustrating, but on every coach program that we've had over the last couple of years, we have always had someone from the NHS on the program. And really interesting, on the last couple of programs we've had as well, we've even had cardiologists come in on our program.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, really. And because they're cardiologists, I assume that all cardiologists would understand HRV and coherence, and they don't. It's just not part of the training, which was a surprise to me. But of course, once they get an insight of this thing, exists and it's there, they get it very, very quickly, obviously. And what's encouraging is they're kind of blown away by what coherence is and what it can actually do for you, physiologically. So that's something else that's been building, and I'm very excited about. And it looks like we're going to have a couple of NHS, independent, proper NHS clinical research projects running using HRV biofeedback, and inclusive of the HeartMath techniques as well. And if we think about what's going on in the NHS at the moment, and the fact that it's getting harder for people to go into hospital, there's longer waiting lists for things as well. We need to shift the model to one where we empower people to take a bit of control and responsibility for their own health. And so simple tools like self-regulation, HRV biofeedback, that are cheap and have no side effects at all, but actually really quite effective. I think they have an important role to play in what the new model needs to look like. So I'm kind of juggling all of these different balls and projects, which feels good. It's exciting. Maybe there's too many on the go, actually.
That sounds good. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point you make there in terms of the explosion in technology, health measurement technology, and people having smartwatches and being able to measure their stress levels, and that the knock-on of that is people now have well-being anxiety. So whereas before they were blissfully ignorant that they were stressed, now they know they're stressed, and if they're lucky, their phone tells them to breathe out a couple of times or something like that, and they don't have the uh, skills and knowledge to go and do something about it, or they
Yeah.
might have read, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, prospective clients saying, I tried meditation and it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
It's probably because you are so far off the window of tolerance that the
Yeah.
thought of sitting with your own thoughts is actually painful.
Yeah, I think that plays a large part in it for many people. I think also, unfortunately, a lot of people are expecting a quick fix, and meditation for most people will not be a quick fix. It's something that you've got to give it a chance. You've got to settle into it. You've got to give it some time. You've got to give it some repetition, and of course, if you do, for 90% of people, meditation and mindfulness are going to be extremely beneficial. But unfortunately, we've got ourselves into a world where a lot of people aren't prepared to give it the time and effort, and they do want a quick fix. And so that's where some of these technologies can be more appealing, I think. But at the end of the day, there are no silver bullets. There's well, if you really want to take control of your life, then even some of these technologies that might zap the vagus nerve and give you an instant relaxation hit, which could be really beneficial if you've got high anxiety, for example. But again, you're not learning a tool for yourself or skill for yourself. You and I both know that you can activate that response for yourself. And for some people, it might take a bit more practice, but you can increase your own vagal tone. You don't need to go straight down the route of zapping yourself and then relying on that. Not to say that those things aren't useful, because they are, and they have a place. So yeah, I think one of the things that HeartMath maybe has as a benefit is, even if you don't get the sense, or you can't feel that what you're doing is good for you or putting you in a different state, unfortunately most people can't feel to begin with, then the technology will tell you. So we do often find that we've had people come to us who say, well, I tried meditation and I tried mindfulness and it's not for me, I can't do it. So what's this and how is it different? And then when they have a gadget to look at, and they have something to do, as in to focus their attention on a breath pacer, and to focus attention on being told to feel pleasant feelings, but they're getting the feedback in real time from the screen. It does seem to work for a group of people who need that instant feedback. And then what's great, of course, is once you see that relatively quickly you can begin to bump your score up, just by getting the breathing right, you can begin to get the score up. That's an instant validation, and it's an instant reward for you as well. So, oh, well, in the space of just a few minutes, I've gone from a 1.5 to a 3. So this is great. I can do this. I can do this. And there's the motivation to keep going with it.
Yeah.
Yes, so it works for for a certain group of people, who, particularly those who are interested in the tech and need the validation and the feedback.
Yeah. And I think that's the great thing, is that the inner balance is a trainer.
Mm.
And at some point, you want people to say, hang on a sec, I've now got that skill.
Mm.
I don't need the trainer. I want to use that skill before a big meeting.
Yeah.
Or when I would previously have an argument with someone, to actually apply it, use the inner balance to train your capability to get better at it, but don't use it as a crutch like
Yeah.
all the other technologies and say, oh, I didn't have time to zap my vagus nerve this morning, I'm going to have a terrible day, which is the risk with all of this. As you say, there's no quick fix, and I don't think there's a free lunch either.
There's not, unfortunately. No, there's not.
And
No, and even with our stuff, you you need to give it a good chance. I mean, I personally think, based on my own practice, but also with people I've coached and trained, I really think it's 20 minutes a day of practice that makes the big difference, that really hardwires this in.
mm,
I mean, look, 3 minutes here and there is better than nothing. But to really reap the rewards, you do need to be prepared to put in that type of effort. I mean, the nice thing with our stuff is you could sit on the sofa and, regulate your breathing whilst looking at the biofeedback every now and again while watching TV. You could do that. So you don't have to go and sit on a Zazen cushion, crossed legs, or anything like that. But it isn't magic. It does take effort. And the important piece, as you've just said, is not just doing it for the 20 minutes a day to get your boost, that will do you lots of good. It will balance your autonomic nervous system. It will give your amygdala a rest. It will get you in the prefrontal cortex. It will change your hormonal balance. That's all good stuff. But what's even better is to then, as you say, when you don't have the sensor on your ear and you go into the meeting, or the email pops into the inbox that makes you go, oh God, not that person again. To then in real time practice the techniques, whether it be the coherent breathing by itself, or to do the little bursts of bringing in the positive emotions before the meeting, after the meeting, to rebalance because you got stressed, and that integration into daily life. That's when it really, really makes a difference, I think. And that requires a commitment. It's a lifestyle then. And although there's very few times when I might go a day or two without practicing this in any way, if that does happen to me for whatever reason, I notice it. I find it to be uncomfortable, but that's quite good then, because it feels uncomfortable. So then it's the reminder to me, it's because I'm not doing my practice.
Yeah, you've got that awareness, detailed awareness of your state. I mean, and I think one of the things I notice, you need to have got to a certain tipping point to recognize you need to do something about it. My own experience was, it took me burning out to realize that wasn't the way. And that actually, I think to get to the top end of burnout, or the far end of burnout, you have to become pretty numb to what's going on. And so the signals, and I'm sure you've seen it when you talk about techniques such as HeartMath, and a lot of people in the room, particularly men, it seems to me, but will stiffen and go, oh, I handle stress really well. And I've seen this on trainings, and I've gone, you've got the same biology as everybody else. The likelihood is you are more numb to your stress than everybody else. And then they look at me, decide whether they want to stay in the training course or not. Because that's a pretty uncomfortable thing to be told. Is there's no such thing as handling stress in that regard. The only general exception I've seen to that is when I've seen a triathlete on a course, and you put HeartMath on those, and those guys, if they're regular trainers, those guys have got beautiful HRV. They get into coherence like that. Damn it! So I tend to not pick those as demo subjects, because they make really lousy subjects.
Yeah, they do. There's quite often in a room, there's someone who's just like zen and chilled out anyway. It's just a genetic thing, or like you say, it's a sports thing, and they've part of their sports training is that they know how to manage their state and self-regulate. And so, but for those others, some of the sort of corporate athlete types, and it does tend to be men, like you say, unfortunately, who have this perception that, well, stress has got me where I am, and it's my ability to kind of handle all this stuff that makes me strong and successful. And it's like, no, you've kind of got there in spite of all of that, actually. And it's just wear and tear, and you can't keep doing that forever. That's where the burnout comes from, of course, is these people often say to themselves, no, I'm strong, I can handle this. And in some ways, it's maybe even their mental resilience that gets them into trouble, because the mind keeps telling them, you're okay, keep going, just got to do this, you just got to do this. And they're not hearing the body. And they're not recognizing, the information that's coming this way, which you and I both know there's more information that comes this way to the brain than the brain to the rest of the body. And they're just not getting those signals, those cues. And then eventually the body will just take over and go stop. And that's when the burnout happens. Unfortunately, we do see more and more people finding themselves in that state, don't we? It's more and more common in society. And unfortunately as well, I see quite a few people who sort of bounce from burnout to burnout, not even learning the lesson. So I'd say, you're maybe in a minority of someone who's been there, seen it, experienced it, and recognizes, I don't want to go there again. And so you've made a lifestyle change.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. My best guess is that I've burnt out 3 times.
Oh, okay. So it took you 3 times to learn the lesson.
Yeah. Not that smart, but I think, and I I could go there again. I think I'm wired that way.
Yeah.
Uh, really goal focused, tendency towards alpha behavior, all those characteristics. I've got them, but I'm
Mm.
aware of it now and I manage it, and I'm more aware of the signals. So when it does, I recognize it and say, hey, hang on a sec.
Mm.
I recognize this. I might only be at a very early stage, but I recognize I've got to do something.
Yeah.
I'm also a worse combination that I love coffee,
Yeah.
and according to my DNA, I am genetically predisposed to not handling it very well. And so I can, as I start to increase my caffeine intake, I go, hang on a second.
Yeah.
For me, that accelerates it. So I
Mm.
think I've become more aware of it through learning these techniques and practicing and
Yeah.
making sure.
I think that's as good as it gets. I think, unless you are a monk living in a cave and you don't need to worry about anything else in life other than meditating and someone else is bringing you your food, I think for those of us that live in the real world, it's it's very challenging to be on an even keel all the time. And I mean, I've been doing this stuff for I've been practicing art math for 13, 14 years. And I get stressed. Life is going to throw challenges our way. I have a need for achievement. I want to achieve things as well, and I want to be busy, and sometimes it gets too much. But so long as you have the self-awareness, so long as like that window is relatively short where you before you recognize, no, I'm actually putting myself under too much pressure here. I can sense that I'm beginning to tip off in terms of performance and all of that. I'm getting a bit of information. Where's the bad back? Why has that happened? Why is there ache and pains in my shoulders at the moment? As long as you get those cues and you act on them, then I think really that's what it's all about, because you're rebalancing yourself relatively frequently. The dangers are when you're out of balance for too long.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And trying to make sure also you've got some support systems in place, which is really difficult at the minute.
Mm.
And that people are looking out for you, whether it's been in your team, in your family. And also, I found the process of looking out for others increases your ability to look out for yourself, which again, I think is
Yeah.
challenged in the current climate.
Yeah, it is. It is the whole, separation thing, the Zoom thing, the bouncing from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, and the propensity to be never really quite fully present. It's just like, okay, meeting, let's get this done. Let's talk business. Let's do that. Relationship side can slip in the way that we're working at the moment, but it doesn't have to. And I think, well, I know that Zoom can facilitate a really strong and deep connection between people, but you have to work at that. You have to, you've got to make sure that you are paying attention. And actually, for that, my heart math practice enables me to do that, because if I'm in my heart, then I am connected with others. I do want to listen. I do want to notice. I want to hear. I want to ask the question. I don't want to dive straight into business, and so it is going to be more and more important. I think it's the what's the old Alvin Toffler Future Shock quote? The more high tech, the more high touch, and we're all having to be more high tech in the way that we're engaging with each other through Zoom, etc. And I do think that we therefore also need to be more high touch, as in the making sure the human side stays. That's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about We Had Heart, actually, is because the whole purpose of it is to bring people together in a Zoom room to actively feel care and appreciation and compassion for each other, and for yourself. So you like sitting there for half an hour basically feeling these feelings actively for each other and for self, and it's very, very powerful. And if we have got perhaps a 6-month winter of, unfortunately, if not full on lockdowns, then restricted ability to socialize, then I think the more people who can actively use Zoom to connect in a meaningful way, not just a superficial way, then we could keep ourselves in a good place. We can still have connection even if we aren't in the same physical space as each other.
Yeah, I'll put a link to the We Add Heart website in the description.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It's open to anyone to join the groups. There's they're popping up all over the place now. So even if there's not one in your exact location, there'll be one within 50 miles or so. And it doesn't matter because it's online anyway. You could join someone's group in America. We don't mind. Just join a group.
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
So you mentioned previously about your love of sort of combining music and art,
Mm.
and that's consolidated in, am I pronouncing it right, Syntropy?
Yep, Syntropy. Yeah, so Syntropy is a bit of a side project. I was hoping it might be something that my US friends might be interested in, but they've got their own interests, so it's not a HeartMath project. So yes, so Syntropy, it's one of those things that just kind of popped up and flowed during the lockdown actually. And so a friend of mine, Ali, she's one of our coaches actually, she's another HeartMath coach, she's an artist, and she had created an installation which used heart rate variability to power the installation. So you would go in and you'd put an M wave on your ear, and then the feedback from the heart rhythms would change the installation in terms of the colors and the kind of movement and frequencies of the display. So so she's pretty cool in terms of the art that she's doing.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And she contacted me and was saying, I'd quite like to make some breath pacers. And I was like, that's a great idea, because actually, the Inner Balance breath pacer, it's we're revamping the Inner Balance app. It's going to be much more engaging. It's looking a little bit tired. And I thought, well, also, what about people who don't want the technology? It'd be quite nice to create breath pacers. And I'd had this idea about geometries as well. I just like geometries, and I think they're interested in kaleidoscopes and things like that. And Joe Dispenza's into some of that type of stuff. So we were just talking about this idea of maybe using art to pace breathing. And then at the same time, another friend of mine, Mark, who makes chill out music, like 8D chill out music, started talking to me about binaurals. And he said, you know about them? I was like, well, I don't really know about them. I've got some binaural stuff, and I find it to be quite good for getting into certain mental states. But if you're looking at binaurals, then why not look at coherence? Because as far as I'm aware, not many people are using coherence in binaurals. So anyway, he makes proper music. It's the 8D and the binaurals is a more subtle aspect of it. And I just thought, why don't we all just get together and see if we could do something? So Mark had some tracks anyway, and Ali listened to the tracks, and she thought, well, we'll create some art. And she found some new way of creating these lovely geometries, and it just worked. So I'll briefly describe them, then you can tell me what you think of them. But they're these beautifully exquisite geometries that sort of emerge over 5 minutes, and they're wonderful to look at. I think they're kind of psychedelic in a way. They take me somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's just chill out music, and it's really beautiful, but it's not too obtrusive, or it's not taking too much of your attention. And the 8D works nicely in terms of it kind of moves you around in your head a little bit, and the binaurals are very subtle, but they do a bit as well. And so we created one, and we just thought there's something in this. So we decided to set up a separate business, Syntropy Partnership, to create Syntropy State. So we got 8 of these things now. Only one of them's a breath pacer actually, and that's quite subtle. The rest of them are designed just to take you on a bit of a 5-minute relaxation journey. And we themed them around energy centers. Ali's very intuitive in the way that she does her art, and we just always get them out there. And so we shared them with some coaches, and then we just pop them on the website for sale. £19, they're pretty cheap. We've got some phenomenal feedback from people. So we think we're onto something, and the plan actually is we're going to turn them into an app, and then curate artists and musicians to come in and to contribute. So the idea is you'd have all sorts of different types of art, maybe photography and film as well, and a different, you'd have some maybe like electronic music like we're using at the moment, or you might have real instruments, acoustic, or you might even just have like a harp just playing a note or something like that, but with the visual. And you don't need to do, they're passive, you just sit and watch it, as you know. And but for some people they seem to be powerful. So I don't actually know what experience you had of them. What do you think? Maybe this isn't fast, you might be able to diss them, I don't know.
I know. I'm currently working out how to do a video on them.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so I will do a video on them. I think they're really. First of all, I'm annoyed that they're better than the one that I did for my coaching clients.
Oh,
So
okay.
people who don't want to use it in a
Yeah.
balance, I did it, and I've just got one on the YouTube channel, which
Mm,
is a really rudimentary breathing pacer. So
that's great.
my initial feeling was annoyance because it's way better than mine.
Sorry.
But I think that yeah. Don't worry about my limited graphical skills, but I think they're great. I think they're really good. They all elicit different feelings. For
Oh,
me,
that's
I
good.
guess that's a real personal thing. I love the breath pacer. I think it's really important that that people have access to a breath pacer that isn't in a balance.
Yeah.
That either they can't afford it, which
Mm-hmm.
is definitely an issue
Mm-hmm.
increasingly. I think at the
Yep.
minute,
Yeah, definitely.
right? And that idea of being able to get into coherent, just a little helping hand in coherence. And
Mm,
still, people still use my rudimentary one, and it's great because
mm,
it means they get that experience
mm,
uh, of what it's like. So I think that's great, and then I think that it's giving people a reason to stop is one of the real challenges, and I think it gets your attention,
mm.
and then you start to feel and experience it. And it's interesting because I spoke recently to Stefan Chmelik, who's the inventor of the Sensate Pebble,
Ah,
the
yeah, yeah. Mm,
and his primary drive to that. He's been experimenting with sound for decades in terms of how sound affects the nervous system reaction and brings calm, and the idea that there are a lot of people out there who just never stop.
mm,
And so the idea of giving them something to stop with, in a
mm.
similar way that's one of the things that Inner Balance does.
Yep.
I think the videos also give people a good reason to stop.
Mm.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
We're all masters at watching the telly. So
yeah.
we're not asking anyone to develop a new skill. So as an entry point for stopping and taking a moment and noticing what effect things have on you,
Mm.
I think they're fantastic. I think really good.
Great.
It's
Well,
really
that's good to know. Yeah, we had a lovely bit of feedback from a customer who said that she uses them to give herself a little treat. So she's like, well, I don't really want to do my emails or my accounts or whatever it is, and but if I do them, then I'll give myself 5 minutes of one of those Syntropy States videos. And I thought that's quite nice actually. I like the idea of that. And I think one of the ways it works for people as well is that we all have too much screen time. I appreciate that. And we can say to people, well, you shouldn't, go away and do something else. But if you're sat in front of your computer and you just want a 5 minute pause between answering your emails and engaging in a presentation, then actually they work really quite nicely because although you're at your screen, they are inducing a relaxation response and they are disengaging you from whatever it was you were doing before. And I mean, as you may have experienced, they sort of put you in a little bit of a trance, don't they? You sort of drift off somewhere for a bit.
yeah,
And I think that's, again, it's valuable. They're another tool that people can use just to get a little bit of downtime, a bit of rest before they then engage in the next task. So watch this space. We're really excited. We've got the apps in development at the moment, and the idea is that we will grow it to become a library of all sorts of different nice art and music relaxation aids.
yeah,
Simple.
yeah. I think it'd be an interesting angle if we're in this for the long haul, which is what it's increasingly looking like. That maybe companies ought to be providing those sorts of things to stop the back-to-back Zoom calls.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
that's one of our ideas. Is that might be a a potential market. I mean, businesses they not to kind of again diss other approaches and things. So I think it can be quite easy for organisations to take the route where they say, well, we'll give everyone headspace, we'll give everyone calm, something like that. And that's us doing our bit. And it's like, well, that's great, and it's a good thing, and they should do it. But actually, what, most people don't sustain their use of those things. After 30 days, only 4% of people apparently are still using those types of approaches.
Yeah.
That hadn't been commonly known until someone did some research relatively
Yeah.
recently at Radio University. But that's the reality of it. And so
Yeah. A bit like a gym membership in February.
it's like a gym membership, and it's also like gadgets. I appreciate that, I've bought gadgets and I don't use them consistently. And so what I think is important actually is that there is a portfolio of tools that people can use. So yeah, give people a go at Headspace and Calm. And if it works for them and it sustains, brilliant. But it is not going to work for and be sustained by most people. So they need another tool. And I'm not suggesting that Syntropy States is going to necessarily have a usage beyond a certain percentage. It's normal. What's the average person only uses 5 apps, but they've got tens of them on their phone. So this is just normal for the world we live in. And so I think organizations need to get a bit smarter about what they're offering in terms of well-being, and not just taking that approach of, well, we'll give everyone a mindfulness app, we'll get someone to come in and teach a yoga class a couple of times a week, and we'll do some salsa dancing, and other people could go for a lunchtime run. We've got all the bases covered. You haven't. And now you're asking people to work from home, and people are being made redundant. So there's people who are left behind working from home are under higher pressure, and they need more help and assistance. So I think, organizations need to be looking at some of this other stuff, and make it easy for people to fit into their day. So 5 minutes on your computer while you're at it, great.
Yeah.
Yes, people are going to need more help, more high tech, more high touch.
Yeah. I like that. High tech, high touch. That's really cool.
Alvin Toffler, not me. He said it in the 80s.
Yeah. I heard that one. That's really cool. So in terms of HeartMath, assuming they're all back in their office now, are they?
Yeah, so they had a bit of a scare themselves with the California wildfires, and they were evacuated. They were out of their offices for over 3 weeks, and then actually, going back, thankfully both of their offices survived, which was, when you look at the burn zone, I mean, a miracle, really. And thankfully, all bar, unfortunately, a couple of members of staff did lose their home, but everybody else's homes were fine as well. So they're back. I mean, I was incredibly impressed and humbled by the way they dealt with it. They were still, I was having Zoom calls with Howard and Roland and some of the folks there, and they were practicing the techniques under the highest pressure. They literally didn't know whether their homes and offices were going to be burnt to the ground or not. So that was, in all about 6 weeks of uncertainty for them, on top of all of the COVID challenges that they've had in California, where it's been pretty full on there. But they're back. They're good. They're working on lots of new stuff. So the main thing, a couple of things in the pipeline. There's going to be a new online program called AdHeart Facilitator, which was being filmed last week, actually. So that's going to be beautiful, high production values, and it's essentially for people who want to learn HeartMath for themselves, but would also like to share it informally. So it's not like a coaching certificate or program or anything like that. But if you're, say, a yoga teacher, and at the end of a yoga class you wanted to share heart lock-in, which actually is teaching heart lock-in, the whole program teaches heart lock-in. But if you wanted to be able to teach that like properly, because you'd learned it properly, and to say, I've actually got a little HeartMath badge that says, I can do this, then that's what it's for, really. So that's good, because it opens up HeartMath to a larger group of people, and people who just want to share it informally with what they're doing. There is the Inner Balance app is in development. It's taken a bit longer than we would have liked, but that will be completely overhauled. So we recognize that it's we've had it for a while. It's a bit behind the curve, and we need a new user experience. We need it to be more engaging. So that's looking pretty cool. And also some work being done with the Global Coherence app as well. So that's the app that you can use for big meditations, and you can log in and see everyone around the world meditating together, and then everyone who's got one of the Inner Balance sensors could actually be included in the recording of coherence. So we can actually look at everyone's coherence level wherever they are in the world, and then we work that out as an average, and so see what the average coherence of the group is. So it's a cool app.
Yeah.
It's had a few glitches, but that one now is in a new stage of development, and can't really say too much about that one. But there's hopefully going to be a really cool application with that, which means that everybody could be measured. so not just people with a sensor, which would be wonderful. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool.
there's
I
some
have a
good stuff
strange
going on.
reaction with the Global Coherence app
Yeah.
because I think my inherent competitiveness, I struggle a bit to put that to one side. So you see who else is on there, and I'm trying to say, stop looking at the average score and stop trying to beat everybody. But I still have some work to do on that. My competitiveness.
This is the downside of the technology. Yeah, you've got to make the tech work. I think that's the problem. Maybe the problem of society that we have as a whole is when we make technology work for us, it's great, it's amazing, it's awesome stuff. You know, being able to get a cab just like that when you want one is incredible. But when we start to be impacted by it and compete with it, or it starts, you know, like with social media, kind of using us as a currency to send us information and a worldview and sell us stuff, then that's when we have a bit of a problem. So yeah, that, you know, the biofeedback, it can be a problem if you've got a very high need for achievement and you want to beat your score all the time. The danger is it could frustrate you, and of course that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the opposite.
I think
Yeah,
that's a. I mean, that's a learning path too, isn't it? I kind of. It took me a long time of practicing heart math to come to terms with the fact that each time I'm not always better than last time because things happen, you know, because I'm doing it after a busy day or I've had too much coffee or, you know, there are lots of different reasons, and that's okay. And you learn from that. And also I use Muse.
yeah.
And, you know, Muse is really interesting, I think, a whole biofeedback bit about when, similarly to HeartMath, when you drop into the red, or in that case, when the waves start getting really loud or the storm comes in, it's okay. That's all right. But you're competitive. Don't beat yourself up, which is clearly the way I was. I've evolved is that competitive thing. It's okay. It's okay. You'll get better by the fact that you correct and improve it, than by beating yourself up because you didn't maintain a super high coherence.
And that's all part of the self-awareness, self-regulation journey. If when you start realizing that your sort of programming up till now predisposes you towards behaving like that, it's then at that point that you've got the choice to be able to change it. When I was chatting with a mate of mine this morning, I go on a Friday bike ride every morning with a buddy, and we chat, and he's telling me that he's come off Strava. He said, I've come off Strava because what I realized was I was just kind of like, you know, looking at beating my previous times and seeing who else might have beaten my times. And I just thought, what's the point in that? I'm kind of on a level experiencing some stress as a result of doing something that should be really enjoyable. And having stopped being on Strava, he's finding it quite liberating that he can just ride his bike around and do what he likes and, you know, just have fun. So yeah, you know, tech is great. I love tech. I buy too many gadgets, but we do need to be a bit careful that it doesn't actually end up inadvertently causing us stress or anxiety or frustration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what gadgets are you looking forward to, or have you got your eye on?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Mendy, and I'm getting very, very frustrated and having to do lots of coherence around the fact that it keeps being delayed. I should have had it a couple of months ago. So the Mendy is a bit like the Muse, and but it uses what's called functional near infrared spectroscopy. It's basically measuring the amount of blood in the prefrontal cortex, and it's interesting. It looks like quite a funky gadget, and I think it could work really quite nicely with HeartMath, because what we know is when you get coherent, so the heart rhythms go into coherence, but the other impact we don't actually measure is what's going on in the brain. And I'm pretty certain that if I hit a high level of coherence, then the Mendy will show the activation of the prefrontal cortex. So I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in seeing if I can come up with any kind of ways of not just ways of coherence, but ways of increasing the prefrontal activity. And I just want to see their app and see what the exercises are. So looking forward to that one. That looks pretty cool.
I think it could be really interesting when you've got that data. So you've got heart rate and what's going on in the brain, to synchronize that with visualizations.
Yeah, well, that's the future.
Do some proper,
That's the future.
proper tricky stuff for that.
You could. Well, we're also looking at the VR stuff for Syntropy as well. in the augmented reality. But yeah, so Mendy should be a good one. Oh goodness me, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a very simple gadget. It's the little pebble-shaped thing that glows the colours of breath pace. So
Milo.
Milo, whatever. I mean, that's a very simple idea. It's not an expensive gadget, but I quite liked the idea of it. It looks nice, like a little pebble in it, and it paces your breathing. Doesn't have coherence in it, which I think is silly, but it's got other breath stuff in it. So
I did speak to them actually.
Oh, really?
Subject.
What did they say?
Thank you for your thoughts. We decided on these breath paces were the optimum ones, but we'll take your thoughts into consideration. All right.
Okay. Well, they were wrong to leave out coherence. They should have done a bit more research. But anyway, and the other one is I've been using. I'm going to wave my ankle at you, if I may. I've got one of the. I've not got an ASBO. It's not a tracker, but it's the Apollo.
Okay.
I've had it for a month and a half. I've got I've been doing an hour a day with it minimum. I've got 40 odd hours worth of use of it.
This is the vibrating.
This is a vibrating thing. Yeah, so it's got a number of different frequencies in it that purport to activate the autonomic nervous system in different ways, particularly the vagus, of course. And I don't know. I think it. Maybe I'm the wrong person to try it. Maybe it'd be better if someone, say, who had an anxiety disorder gave it a go. Maybe they'd be able to notice a difference, and maybe it's just because I'm quite used to the self-regulation thing that I'm not. Yeah. I don't think I'm getting any benefit from it. I've given it a really good go. It feels quite nice on my ankle when it vibrates, but in terms of perceiving benefits, I just don't think I have. It's nicely made. It's expensive. It is expensive. So yeah, but I think it's another one of the gadgets that I've purchased that I won't sustain my use of, and I'll probably end up giving it to someone who I think it might be more beneficial for. And I'll be interested. I will find someone who's got some anxiety and give it to them and see what they think of it. I like the idea, and it does seem to be quite well researched. So like I say, I'm not saying it doesn't work, because it may well be very effective for some people, but for me, I just don't think it really adds a benefit to my practice. And I've put it on whilst doing coherence practice, and it makes zero difference to my achievement levels.
Yeah, but I think it's incumbent upon us to look at these various bits of tech, because not everything works for everyone. The Nirvana Zen, for people who are in that stuck state, who can't even sit still long enough to use HeartMath, and I'm sure we've both come across those.
Yeah,
it's a good place to start. It's not going to teach them self-regulation, but it does work, and it really does work. I mean, I noticed quite a big change in heart rate variability from that.
Yeah,
that is expensive.
Yeah,
and the Sensei I've found quite interesting when using with HeartMath, mainly just because of its brings your attention to your heart.
Because that's where you wear it. Yeah, very interesting.
And there is something really primal, I think, about those vibrations on your chest. That kind of, it's almost like the chanting without getting too into that. But
no, but it is. It's vibrations. Yeah, I mean, like drumming would have the same effect, and humming, and monks chanting and stuff. It's all doing a similar thing. It's frequencies, isn't it? And so I can see how. Yeah, I hear good things about it.
There's one I wanted to show you that I'm testing at the moment, which is a beast.
Oh my goodness, that's huge! Yeah, what's that? It looks nicely made.
It is. It's a nice piece of German tech. It's called the Bura Stress Releaser.
Ooh.
And it's got heat and vibration, and light, and you can set it to whatever. It's a breathing pacer. You can set it to whatever breathing rate you want. You can put it into coherent.
Yeah.
And you lie down and you put it, and it vibrates. And it vibrates on your chest, and you follow the pacer.
Very nice. So it's not measuring HRV. It's just pacing. Yeah. Does it shine like something on a ceiling or something, or is it just audio and haptic?
Yeah, so it's got binaurals in that. it paces the light, so the light comes on and off. So it's a pacer, but multi-sensory pacer. So the thing I really like about it is you can just lie down, set it to coherent breathing, and have 20 minutes of just following the pacer without having to.
Nice. And have you used the inner balance whilst using it?
I haven't yet. That's
Interesting to see what it does to your scores. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do. That's good. I've not done a video on this, but it's quite a nice bit of kit. But it's German, so all of the anything you see on the internet is all in German on it. But it's an interesting bit of kit, and
yeah,
about £100. So it's quite a nice bit of kit. I'll do a video on that.
That looks very reasonably priced for what it is.
It is, yeah. So a bit big, not quite as portable as the set as a Sensate, but it's doing something different. Fuzzy again. So, yeah, no, that's so. I think it's incumbent upon us to know what else is going on there, because not all one size fits all.
Indeed, yeah.
And increasingly people are going to these things and thinking that they're the answer, and then they turn out that they're not. So who do they turn to say what is the best?
Yeah,
is the best thing, because not everyone can afford to go for therapy or coaching or
exactly. Yeah,
or we don't know what's wrong yet, which I think is more often the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's. I think we just keep watching and see what else.
There's loads of exciting stuff coming out, and it is all getting a bit cheaper as well, which is important. Yeah, it's exciting times. I think there's some amazing technologies out there, and I think the VR and the AI stuff is going to be interesting as well. Certainly, going back to what you were talking earlier about the NHS, stuff needs to be delivered digitally, and so that's going to create, I think, a real boost in innovation. At the moment, it tends to be stuck around the whole CBT thing, like, using AI for CBT. It asks you a question, you give it an answer, then it asks you another question and another. And it's like, that's fine. It's great. But I think we need to be looking at other stuff that is engaging on the physiological level, like the coherence technology and the vagal stimulation and these other types of things as well.
I think in VR or AI, eye movement therapy as well would be an interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Within the VR, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely an area to explore. I wish I was still an engineer and could do those things. I'd definitely be playing. I have to resist the temptation to go and buy a headset just to play it.
Reverse engineer it.
Yeah. I'm constantly having to resist those temptations for more gadgets. Cool. Well, I'm just wondering how long we've been talking. Seems like a long time.
Been about an hour, yeah, probably.
Yeah, no,
we should give everyone a break from their computers and.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I'd like from you, Gavin, is in terms of all the people who are watching, who are in these uncertain times, who some little advice that you could give them in terms of helping them deal with the uncertainty and the situation they're going through at the moment. If you could give them one piece of advice, what would you give?
Well, I think one piece of advice would be that how you are feeling is dictating how you're seeing the world, and so it's not real. And when we're feeling stressed, we tend to view the world in terms of threat and problems and confusion, and that's why we then get stuck in this kind of vicious cycle of anxiety and worry. From HeartMath's perspective, emotions are reactions, but they're also choices. And so my advice is to recognize that you have the power to choose how you feel some of the time. So if you notice that you're getting anxious about something, one thing that you can control, because none of us can control the coronavirus situation or crisis, or whether our jobs might be in danger or whatever, or whether we might even have lost our jobs, one thing we can actually control is our breath. And when we control our breath and we deepen and we slow our breath, we begin to change our physiology. We begin to change the way that the brain is operating as well. So if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling worried, don't worry about all that stuff. Just focus on your breath. slow it down, deepen it, try and get your breathing to around about 6 breaths a minute. For most people, that's 5 seconds for an in-breath and 5 seconds for an out-breath. But what's more important is that it feels comfortable to you. So if you want to slow that up or slow that down or speed it up a bit, that's fine. But deepen, slow the breath, get it nice and balanced. Make sure the belly's relaxed as well. What that will begin to do is to create coherence in the system. And what happens then is more information is going from the body, particularly the heart, to the brain. And this ordered rhythmic information from the autonomic nervous system and the heart is sending a message to the brain, which is saying, in effect, everything's okay. There's order and there's stability coming back from the body here. So you're sort of tricking yourself. You're hacking into the autonomic nervous system, and then that's sort of tricking the brain into getting out of anxiety and worry. So the more you do the breathing, the more you begin to get the prefrontal cortex back online again. And when you do that, you begin to see the world differently. The feelings begin to shift, and you begin to see, even if it's just a realization, I can't control this right now, or I need to be patient, or I don't need to catastrophize, the world's not going to come to an end. It begins to open up more. And as you begin to get the prefrontal cortex back online as well, you can then begin to regulate the emotion. So it's possible then to shift your focus to, well, what can I be grateful for right now? What could I be appreciative of? Or if I look out of my window, what could I put my attention on that might give me some sense of awe, whether it's the trees or the sky or whatever? We can choose our emotions. And if we can choose more of the pleasant, positive ones, particularly the gratitudes and appreciations and the cares or the love, that has an additional benefit. Well, it increases our levels of coherence anyway. So again, it broadens even more the perspective we have on the world, but it also begins to impact positively our hormones. So we get out of this sort of trap of the adrenaline and the cortisol, and we begin to get into a place where we can produce hormones that are more beneficial, particularly like DHEA, which we need for vitality and is compromised when we're under stress. So we get some DHEA, rebuilds us. And if we can really tap into the gratitudes and the loves and the cares, we might even get some extra oxytocin as well, which would be really beneficial. And then it's really then about sort of, getting the seesaw out of the stress, too much stress going on, and getting yourself nice and balanced. Or if you really, put some effort into this, you can begin to tip it the other way, where you're getting more of a ratio of pleasant, positive emotions. You're taking more control over how you feel. You're using the breathing to keep yourself in balance as well. And then you can even begin to shift those hormonal ratios, in quite a profound way. So that would really be it. It's like, you don't need technology to do that, obviously. You can facilitate it. But yeah, these times when things are changing very fast, we're confused. There's multiple narratives going on. Very easy to go down some rabbit holes with all that stuff. You can still control your breath, and you can control your emotions, what you put your focus on. And if you do that, you'll be in a good place to respond appropriately. And when we do come out the other side of all of this, chances are you won't be burnt out. You'll be in a good place still, physically and mentally. So that'll be the takeaway. Can't control anything else, but you can control your breathing, and then you can control your feeling.
Yeah, that's great. That's brilliant. I think hopefully everyone can take that away and give that a go. And if and when people want to come and find out more about what you're doing, where do they find you?
So come to heartmath.co.uk. That's simple enough, and we're very happy to set up a little code for any of your followers. So if people are interested in our products, if they use the code HatsonCoach, maybe you could pop it in the details as well. But if they use the code HatsonCoach, all one word, doesn't matter if it's uppers or lowers, very welcome to a 10% discount on any of our stuff. So there's an offer there. And if you like the idea of a once a month heart-focused meditation, then check out weirdheart.com. There's a little directory there, and you can put in your location and find a group near you. So that's weirdheart.com. And I'll send you also a freebie Syntropy States relaxation aid that you can that people have the link and they can download that. So it's an MP4 that they can download. So there's a few things that might be helpful to people. Actually, I'll tell you what the other thing is, that is the HeartMath experience link. So that's a free 90-minute HeartMath sort of e-learning program that yeah, we can pop the link up for that, and people can then they can experience the techniques and some of the scientific background to HeartMath as well, and that's completely free.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll put all that in the description. Also, I'll put a link into your fantastic YouTube video that you did back at.
Oh, cool. That's relevant again now because we're going into lockdown again. So yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, there's that little video of stuff. Yeah.
So
great.
I'll
Thank you.
That because that's great too. So lots of materials to help people. And Gavin, thanks ever so much. I think this has been sort of really interesting for me, and lots of good information to help people through the current situation and out the other side, which is going to happen at some point.
Let's hope it's sooner rather than later. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks, Gavin.
Cool. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for watching. Please remember to check out the description for the links for everything we've discussed in this video, and remember to use the discount code HATSONCOACH on the HeartMath UK website for any of their products you want to purchase. And if you have any questions about anything we've discussed here, please leave a comment. And if you found it useful, please click that thumbs up button so I know to make more content like this. And for more great conversations and content on staying resilient, click subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.